All right, folks, brace yourselves. A bombshell investigative report has revealed that Donald Trump has corruptly enriched himself off the White House and therefore ultimately the American people to the tune of $3.4 billion. And we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, folks, here at Pondering Politics, we have extensively covered the fact that Donald Trump is objectively, by far, bar none, the most corrupt president in American history. But seeing this figure attached to that, $3.4 billion, is staggering, knowing that we're only 6 months into his second term, and that number could be drastically higher by the end. Now, the report is in the New Yorker. It's called The Number: How Much is Trump Pocketing Off the Presidency by David D. Kirkpatrick, written August 11th, 2025. Now, usually here, when we do these, read these articles, we read them, from first word to last word, but this would leave us here for 3 hours. I've read this article. I encourage you to check it out. There will be a link in the description. But in the meantime, we're just going to read some snippets just to give you kind of an overview. Okay. So this is the intro. At a press conference on January 11, 2017, President-elect Donald Trump explained for the first time how he would handle the many conflicts of interest that his business empire posed for his new role. His company, the Trump Organization, collected money from all over the world for luxury condos, hotel rentals, developmental projects, and club memberships, and he had made deals that put his name on everything, from mail-order steaks to get-rich-quick courses. Could citizens trust him to put the common good ahead of personal profit? How would he assure Americans that payments to his business weren't doubling as payoffs? A journalist asked Trump if he would release his tax returns, as presidents had done for decades. Trump said no, and then explained just how unconstrained he felt by such conventions. He'd recently learned that the president, being beholden only to the voters, is subject to none of the regulations that restrict subordinate officials from conducting private business on the side. He called the loophole, quote, a no conflict of interest provision, as if it were a perk of his employment contract. To illustrate just how glaring a conflict the law allowed him, Trump volunteered that during the transition, he'd entertained a $2 billion offer, quote, to do a deal in Dubai. The offer had come from an Emirati real estate tycoon with close ties to his country's rulers. Trump emphasized that he, quote, didn't have to turn it down. Nevertheless, he'd passed because he didn't, quote, want to take advantage of something. He disliked, quote, the way that looks. Therefore, he continued, his eldest sons, Don Jr. and Eric, would assume daily management of his businesses until he left office. Trump then turned things over to Sherry Dillon, one of his tax lawyers, who argued that he could hardly be expected to do more than the temporary handover. And it goes on to explain about how Trump's name was the real source of his income there, okay? Then it goes on to say that was a different era. Dillon's firm stopped representing Trump in 2021 after the mob he stirred up attacked the U.S. Capitol. And in Trump's second term, the president and his family have paid no mind to their lawyer's promise. During Trump's first term, they pledged to abstain from any new deals overseas. That's out the window. The Trumps are now cashing in on 5 major deals in the Persian Gulf alone. Don Jr., on a recent visit to Qatar, said that the family's restraint during the first Trump administration had not stopped his father's critics from constantly accusing the family of, quote, profiteering. So the Trumps would no longer lock themselves in, quote, a proverbial padded room because it almost doesn't matter. They're going to hit you no matter what. A spokeswoman for the Trump Organization told me that it employs an outside ethics advisor, currently Karina Lynch, a lawyer and a lobbyist who previously worked as a Republican Senate staffer and has represented Don Jr. to, quote, avoid even the appearance of impropriety. Many payments now flowing to Trump, his wife, and his children and their spouses would be unimaginable without his presidencies. A $2 billion investment from a fund controlled by the Saudi Crown Prince, a luxury jet from the Emir of Qatar, profits from at least 5 different ventures peddling crypto, fees from an exclusive club stocked with cabinet officials and named the executive branch. Fred Wertheimer, the dean of ethics reform advocates, told me that, quote, when it comes to using his public office to amass personal profits, Trump is a unicorn. No one even comes close. Yet the public has largely shrugged. In a recent article for The Times, the New York Times, Peter Baker, a White House correspondent, wrote that the Trumps, quote, have done more to monetize the presidency than anyone who has ever occupied the White House. But Baker noted that the brazenness of the Trump family's, quote, money-making scheme appears to have made such transactions seem almost normal. That's the introduction. Okay, and again, this is an absurdly long and vividly detailed article. To read it from start to finish here on stream or here in the video, we'd be here for like 2 hours, okay? Definitely check it out. But I want to emphasize some important things. Like you'll see sections here, for example, where it breaks down American Bitcoin, okay? And then it gives you at the end the estimated gain from that specific venture and then adds it to the running total. So under American Bitcoin, it adds about $13 million to Trump in terms of his net worth, his pockets. And the running total at this point is $1.71 billion in the article, okay? So let's look at Trump Media. Trump Media goes crypto. The family's fourth crypto venture is an attempt by Trump Media and Media Technology to reinvent itself. In April, the company capitalized on the new administration's crypto-friendly policies by announcing a plan to sell volatile crypto assets to ordinary investors. The technical difficulty of buying crypto has long deterred most small and unsophisticated investors, but under Trump, the SEC has made it much easier for investment companies to sell crypto to anyone with a standard brokerage account, though its shares in what are known as exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, that track the price of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other digital assets. Okay, and it goes on and on like this. Not long after the Trump brothers put American Bitcoin in motion, Trump Media began speculating on crypto. This past spring, the company, taking advantage of its high meme stock share price, raised more than $2.3 billion by selling shares and convertible bonds to private transactions in about 50 big investors. Then in July, Trump Media said it spent that money on Bitcoin and options for more. It goes on and on and on like this. Astonishingly, for now, the financial alchemy of turning a meme stock into cash and Bitcoin has added some $1.3 billion in presidential profit to our tally. Dubinsky, the forensic accountant, told me the gambit was, quote, just north of selling snake oil. Goes on to $Trump, right? 3 days before his second inauguration, Trump launched the fifth of his family's crypto vehicles, selling $Trump, a digital token. Trump doesn't purport to hold any value in the way that Bitcoin or stablecoins do, nor does $Trump entitle a buyer to a vote on a company's future direction, as World Liberty's initial token does. It does not even convey the right to own a digital cartoon of Trump. It's a meme coin, a novelty, a bit of fun. The fun, for those who enjoy it, of paying Donald Trump. 8 years after his lawyer promised that his family would never exploit the presidency for profit, Trump had distilled that exploitation to its purest possible form. And again, it goes on to $Trump, which we've covered extensively in previous videos. Skip to the end here. Forgot about the dinner. That's when Trump announced that he'd host an exclusive dinner for the 220 people who held the most $Trump. The top 25 holders would get a tour of the White House. The stunt sent the price back up to $15, earning Trump more trading fees. White House officials defended the dinner by noting that Trump held it at his golf club in Virginia, not at the White House, as though crypto traders would have paid millions of dollars each to have dinner with a former reality star. In a statement, Carolyn Levitt told me, quote, the claims that this president has profited from his time in office are absolutely absurd. She contended that Trump had sacrificed, quote, hundreds of millions of dollars that he could have made if he had devoted himself to his business instead of serving in the White House, and that, quote, the American people love him precisely because he is a successful businessman. Around the time of the dinner, the widely cited crypto research firm Chainalysis, using its own methodology, put the Trump venture's total earnings at $320 million. Adding only this more conservative tally to the estimated early profits from Melania's meme coin yields a total profit of about $385 million. And that, friends, brings us to the running total of $3.4 billion that Donald Trump has corruptly enriched for himself, off the White House and ultimately off the American people. We're only 6 months into his second term, and this is just comic book, cartoon levels of villainy and corruption, and we have to talk about it. We cannot live in a world, for Democrats or Republicans, where the president of the United States, regardless of party affiliation, is expected or entitled to this level of corruption. It should be objectively disqualifying. And the only way it ever will be is if you and I make it the big deal it deserves to be, and the big deal that we know it would be if it were a fucking Democrat, which it never will be, because the Democrats have their problems, but this level of corruption, no, this is exclusively a MAGA Republican Trump phenomenon. We should care. Corruption should matter. Corruption should be condemned. If we condemn it in Democrats, and we do, then it should be more condemned in Republicans when the corruption is even more blatant. Staggering. So please be sure to read this article. Please be sure to share this video, get it out there. We have to bring the American people's attention to Trump's corruption, and we have to make sure it politically costs him and his party in the midterms and in 2028. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.